Welcome to the Beacon Way podcast, hosted by award-winning executive team of Beacon Media and Marketing. With over 3 decades of experience, Adrian, Jennifer, and Ken give you an insider's view of what's working, what's not, and what's on the horizon for digital marketing. Grow your business today with the Beacon Way podcast.
Welcome back to the Beacon Way podcast. This is Jennifer. Really excited to have Brandon and Sanjana on today, and we are talking about the recent 2025 report that they just came up with a great way to do this, basically, but on everything with mental health, insurance, and then a little bit of marketing as well. Like, what's the state of where this is? And so honored to have you guys on and chat about this.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I guess let's start with you, Sanjana. And just for those listening that don't know what Thrizer is, a little bit, if you can just give a brief overview, and then I'd like to go deep into what motivated you to really do this report, and then some of our feedback.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again, Jen, for having us and partnering with us and Thrizer on this super important report. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sanjana, co-founder at Thrizer. Thrizer is a tool that clinicians can use to help their clients successfully navigate out-of-network benefits in a way that's more transparent, accessible, and simple. So happy to answer any questions around that, and get into it a little bit later. But I think, we deal with insurance all the time, right? At Thrizer, I mean, our main job is to basically submit claims in the out-of-network setting. And what we found is a lot more people are going private pay. A lot of clinicians are, and then a lot of clients are also starting to recognize that they have out-of-network benefits. Because this model does exist and is kind of becoming more of a trend, we do need to take a hard look at why, right? Because I think everyone's first, a lot of clinicians come into the field wanting to be accessible, and their first thought is, let me accept insurance. And absolutely, right, that's how we would want them to think. We would love that insurance is an institution that supports them. But what we've learned through this report, and we'll get into kind of the data, is that most people don't think insurance is really supporting them as a clinician for their financial goals, for their well-being, and all these things. And so I think as an industry, we need to become much more creative of how we handle the mental health crisis, because it can't just be, okay, take insurance or go fully private pay. The option, it's probably somewhere in between, right? Because it comes down to very personal goals that clinicians have, but also in a way that suits their clients and the overall industry. So there's just a lot of innovation that's needed within this space. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from reading this report, that there's just a long way to go within the mental health world to really find something sustainable and that works for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say you can't read emotion from a report, but if you could, I would have said frustration. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, that was like the overall emotion that I took out of it. So Brandon, was there anything, can you do a little intro, Brandon, too, on who you are? You're part of this. And then I'd love to hear just anything that was surprising to you.
Yeah, my name is Brandon Grill. I'm the owner of BG Copywriter. I work with a lot of different mental health softwares and private practice clinicians. Thrizer being one, and Beacon also being one. Very happy to say that. Yeah. And kind of where I was coming from with the report is I've seen the frustration, as we were just mentioning, online, right? But I really wanted to quantify it and see what are the facts and what's the hard data. And I think the report did that, we see what clinicians are earning versus what they want to earn. And it's like 60%, insanely. Right. Like any other industry, it would just not be acceptable, So I think in the mental health industry, I don't think that's acceptable either. What was the other part of the question, Jen?
Yeah, just was there anything else that really surprised you? Anything coming out of that you were not expecting? Because I know you've been so involved, grassroots and talking to so many clinicians. So probably some of that you knew, but anything else that really stood out?
Yeah. Aside from the the low pay relative to what clinicians want to earn. That was probably the biggest one for me,
Yeah,
where
I
it's
can see
like,
that.
I knew it was bad, but earning 60% of what you want to earn, and then on top of it, having to deal with insurance hurdles and, claims and denials and clawbacks. So the other aspect of it is all of the reasons why clinicians go out of network. And, they overlap. It's not like, financial for one and administrative burden for another. It's like all of the issues kind of overlap. And it does all go back to like sustainability, accessibility. A lot of clinicians don't want to diagnose or label their clients, which is just a very human reason to not accept insurance. And then if you add the financial aspect and the administrative burden on top of it, it's like it's making less and less sense. Of course, this depends like where you live and your license type and your specialty, but in broad strokes, it is becoming less sensible to be an in-network therapist.
Yeah. We were talking before we got on this about values and aligning your value with what you do. And I think that part really stood out to me too, probably because of what we've just gone through at our company of really refocusing back on our values with the advent of AI. And one thing that kept coming forth, and I've heard others talking about this as well, is that there's almost this conflicting values, right? Like what you were talking about with the not wanting to, like, what's best for my client. I don't want to label them. I don't want to have this information out there, but then I have to sustain myself and make a living. And I mean, those are really, especially for people that go into this field, I think that like going in for that more idealistic purpose, that's going to affect even how they operate. It's going to affect even the quality of care. When you've got those conflicting values, it's hard to function.
Definitely.
I can attest to that for sure. So that one, I see that for sure. So for next year, I think this was a great first step. We did get incredible data. I'd love to hear it, Sanjay, like feedback from the email you sent out from the people, the providers. Like, did you get good feedback? Did people feel like they were heard?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would love to hear just some of those, even anecdotally, some of the things that you heard.
Yeah. I think absolutely. We had so many people kind of reposting it on social media, others writing blogs about it. I think overall, there was definitely positive reception. And I think the reason why is because they were heard, right? I think it's because individually, everyone's feeling this way. And kind of speaking to what Brandon said, putting it together in the volume that we have, right? Hundreds and hundreds of therapists. I hope they do feel heard, right? It's not that they operate within an industry that is not well optimized for them. And I think the conflicting values that you were talking to, it comes at every step of the way, right? Do I accept insurance or not? In that is probably such a personal decision. And then we're trying to make people kind of feel better that, it is good to accept insurance or not accept insurance. There's just no right answer, right? And I think it's such a personal decision. And so this report hopefully showed everyone that it is such a gray area. There is no right answer, and that's fine. But we will continue to push the envelope. We'll continue to find ways that actually help them. And one data point that really stuck out to me is we asked a simple question, right? Overall, is accepting insurance worth it? And this was asked to everyone, and only people who do accept insurance, at least for a part of their caseload, responded to this question. And 53% said it was worth it. 47% said no. So think about an industry where half the people are dissatisfied but feeling stuck potentially, that they have to stay in this type of world, right? Where they don't feel like it aligns with their values. They have all these negative perceptions towards it. They don't think it's worth it, yet they're doing something that they're forced to do just because they want to remain accessible, because that's why they came into the field. So I think that statistic itself, to me, is like, we need to do something about this. And then, of course, like the ideal rates for private pay is just so much higher than what insurance is paying them. And so, yeah, just a lot of data here.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. So when you guys are looking forward to for the next report, I'd love to hear, do you guys have ideas of even some nuance or some other, I mean, I know from the marketing side, I definitely do. So, but I'm curious, do you guys have thoughts on where you want to go next?
Definitely. I definitely want to multiply the end count by 10. It'd be really good if we got a very sizable amount of respondents.
Yeah.
317, that's like, it's good to get some like preliminary data. I think next year is going to be like really setting that benchmark and then building off that. I do want to get more. It was kind of hard working within the Survey Monkey kind of landscape or user interface. Like there was certain functionalities that we didn't have. I would love to get more like the cross tabs, right? Like segment it by license type, by state, like do all the different variations.
Yes.
Because we could look nationally, right? And like Cigna reimburses, I think like $118 dollars per session on average, something like that. It'd be really nice if we knew that number for like the 5 most populous states, right? Like Texas, California, New York. I think that would be really helpful, especially because, it's those are more populous states, which analogously they would probably have more therapists too, right?
Right.
So the logic makes sense. I would love to do all the crosstabs. I also I also am really excited to publish blogs about specific stats within the report. So like really going deeper on the thoughts that I'm having and like things that I'm hearing from therapists or things that I talk about with Sanjana. Really just kind of like going from A to Z on that one specific stat. I think that's been really helpful. And the one blog that we've written so far has gotten really strong feedback about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I go into you, I think that I totally agree in the Survey Monkey part. We're actually testing out an AI survey, AI augmented survey, which is way more custom. And I think that's what it needs because we've done this for marketing where we use a benchmark system through DataBox where we're able to see per state and per region, even cost of client acquisition, and it varies greatly. Cost of client acquisition in Texas versus Iowa or a rural location. I mean, so we've even been able to break it down, even in the same state, but rural to city. And it's really helpful for therapists to know that as they're getting into business. And okay, if I'm in this city and this is what the general, even if I did great at marketing and I beat those numbers, it's good to know what the benchmarks are. And I think that's true for insurance as well. Like we need to know that so that they can make more educated decisions. They deserve that.
Yep, absolutely. And then I would add on top of everything that the two of you mentioned, 2 things. One is there's actually so much anecdotal data that we've gathered, a lot of just qualitative responses, and kind of packaging that up and sharing the stories behind all this data, I think could humanize this a lot too.
I like that.
Right. So like every single question, right? Is insurance worth accepting? There's stories behind that, right? There are so many people who have written in comments about here's why it is and here's why it isn't, and multiply that by the 30 questions we asked. There's just so much just qualitative data that I think people would really benefit from reading, right? Because I think that way on top of the data, it also helps them understand people's thought processes. Maybe people went from insurance to private pay or private pay to insurance. Like, I really want to use this report as a way that people can inform their decision making, right? And I think hearing those personal stories would be really helpful. So that's one thing, if we can figure out a way. And I think, AI augmented tools could really be helpful with that. Kind of the most reposted page, I would say, from our report was the why do people prefer to go private pay, right? Because that was a very qualitative page of here are all the reasons why people are going on top of the X% of people are going private pay, right? So that's one piece. The second piece is getting into a lot more data around out-of-network benefits, I think could be really helpful. So, we did collect a bit of data. We just kind of need to package it up a bit better for next time around. But a lot of people have come back and said X number, I give super bills to 20% of my clients. What does that look like at large? Are people receiving super bills? Are people successfully getting reimbursed from super bills, or is that completely archaic and clients hate it? Right? Because if we're going to be looking at private pay as a very viable option, we have to make sure that clients can still be able to access those services, and out-of-network benefits are just such a win-win for both parts, for both clinicians and clients, that if we really understand how to kind of solve out-of-network benefits and automate it and optimize it, we're gonna be able to take care of both much better. And so I do want to kind of go into the data a bit more there as well.
I like that. I think we could even do a follow-up. Maybe you and I could work on this, Brandon, but I think we could even do a follow-up on maybe picking 4 or 5 stories and really going deep with it, but even before the next report comes out. I think there's something great that could happen there for sure. I agree. We need, and to that point that I was talking to you guys before we got on about this entire industry needs a reset, right? And needing to look at everything more holistically. I think people learn best by, so many therapists are accidental business owners, right? Is kind of what I end up calling them, right? And there's so much education that needs to happen all the way through where you can see the holistic effect of, for example, if I use Thrizer out of network, how does that affect my cost of bringing in new clients? How does that affect my overall business? Like, what is sustainable and what isn't? What's going to help me achieve what I'm trying to do goal-wise, what isn't? The more we can tell in stories, the better, because stories are what people relate to.
Yep.
So I'm excited about that. That could be like a good half project before we move on.
Yeah.
To the
building more awareness and excitement for the next report. If we release this.
Exactly. I think, because I agree. I think the goal this year should be 3,000.
Yeah.
I think that would be incredible.
Easily.
I know the first year we did I think we only had a couple hundred the first year for our marketing, and then the second year, I think 1,000, right? So and then we didn't even really push that. So I think that's very doable. Yeah,
definitely. And I wanted to add on because Sanjana was talking about like how out of network kind of fits into just like the ecosystem of how a practice works. So, if we look at the denials and the clawbacks data,
right,
it's really insane to me. 1 in 4 clinicians has had at least one clawback. That's like a widespread issue. To me, if something is so widespread, that tells me it's systemic rather than individual.
Right.
So it's like, what can we do? Right. Well, to take it even further, what are like the reasons that denials and clawbacks happen? There's like billing platform errors, which I don't think Thrizer is part of. Client related issues like the client not following up, or, let me see, medical necessity and pre-authorization requirements. So things that the client does have some control of, but maybe not the best education about. So we could help out there.
Yeah.
Insurance errors, that is just, to me, unacceptable. What is that? 22%. If this is falling into insurance's responsibility, like 1/5 of the time, it's in their incentive to not fix it, right? Because they make money for denying and delaying claims. Basically what I'm saying is there's a lot that we can do and then a little bit that we can't do, but these are like clear paths for improving the industry. Educate therapists on how to do their own billing, which Thrizer, we could have a huge part in that. And then also we have a great out of network billing platform. Like, we don't really make errors. We do it for clients, and we have hundreds of thousands of successful claims submitted and processed. So some clear takeaways on that front.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mean that to turn into like a Thrizer ad, but
yeah. Well, I mean, again, back to the accidental business owner side of things. I mean, one thing we didn't ask about, I don't think this was in there, was time.
Yeah.
How much time are you spending, right? That time has huge value.
Yeah.
And this isn't about an ad for anybody's services, but in business, you do outsource the things that make the most sense, right? You do bring in experts because no matter where you are in business, intentionally or unintentionally, knowing like where you bring the most value and what actually even can bring you joy. I mean, that's the goal. And then having people that can help you do the other stuff, just that time can be spent somewhere else. So I'm going to remember this one. I want to add time for next year of just how much time there's, people are spending dealing with this.
And if we could, peace of mind. I think that's a big motivator is like just the hassle and the stress is not worth it for a lot of therapists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll add that, insurance companies, as notorious as they are a little bit more lenient in the out-of-network setting. So, in network, there's a lot more requirement of clinicians submitting notes and a lot more audits, a lot more proving medical necessity, all of those things. In the out-of-network setting, there's less of that. It doesn't mean that sometimes insurance companies don't follow up and ask for notes. It happens pretty rarely, though. And so that kind of contributes to less denied claims, right? More coverage for clients. And then also, of course, the aspect, Brandon, you were talking about in terms of less time spent that clinicians can then focus on providing care instead of dealing with insurance. So I'm sure insurance will catch on that everyone's using their out-of-networks and make it 30 times harder in the future. But before that happens, I think we should ride the wave and make sure that
wise. I mean, that's very wise for sure.
Yeah. So right now it's working. So
well, thank you guys so much for just allowing even Beacon to be a part of it. And it's been great for us. It helps us even holistically, right? I think the way the world is going, the more that we can be strategic, whatever your position is, whether you're marketing or insurance or anything, being more strategic and being able to look at how things affect each other just makes you better at what you do.
Yep.
So that's been a huge advantage for us too, of just and empathy. I mean, back to what you said at the beginning, just that was a really hard stat for me to look at the difference in pay versus really what people that have master's degrees, and that just does not seem okay. So, anything else you guys want to add? Do you want to add a little bit about Thrizer? We can add that in there, Sanja. I mean, maybe we'll just have people go to the report and we'll put that information in there. We're talking about doing, I know you said a follow-up webinar, so that could be something that we could even add to the podcast too, if people want to really understand, if they do want to go this direction without a network and use Thrizer, or at least understand what the potential is.
Yep, absolutely. We can have a follow-up conversation about that. But really quickly, as I mentioned earlier, Thrizer is a tool that clinicians can offer to their clients to kind of automate their entire out-of-network benefits process. So we're basically talking about no more super bills, no more insurance calls for both clients and clinicians, and then no more reimbursement waits, right? I think those are kind of the three big friction points that we see and pain points that we see. People are not submitting their super bills. So we do automatic claim submissions. People don't want to follow up with insurance to follow up on their claim statuses. We do that for them. And then finally, people don't want to wait months for their reimbursement checks after having to front all that money for private pay sessions. And so we actually allow clients to just pay a copay while ensuring that clinicians are still getting their full rate up front that we cover. And then essentially Thrizer waits for reimbursement on the client's behalf. So that's how we hope that it removes the friction points that often exist. And I love to say out-of-network benefits are great, but super bills suck. So, we need to kind of parse the two apart. And we're hoping that Thrizer is just part of that movement.
Love it. Okay. Well, always a pleasure to see you guys, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone.
You have been listening into the Beacon Way podcast. Make sure to join us for new episodes every week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Beacon Way on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.